The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, when you log jam Florida and Alabama together, there's nothing short to talk about. Plenty of conversation. Plus, Danny White gives us a little bit of information as to the response on Tennessee's season ticket price in hike. So we will visit with Jimmy Hyams here momentarily as we'll discuss that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. banksandjones.com. So a big show lined up as we get you ready for Tennessee, Alabama. Still seems odd to me that you play Florida and Alabama in back-to-back weeks, but I don't think anybody with the SEC office called me. Coming up, we have some numbers that I want to share with you, and it's Nico Iamaleava compared to Tennessee's past quarterbacks with a full off season to prepare. And then this is the midway point of the season. So this is kind of like your midterm report card. We'll discuss Nico, and I punched up some numbers. Is he closer to Joe Milton or is he closer to Hendon Hooker? Also, Tennessee's next superstar, Calhoun, wrote about him, and he's scary. I just want to give a hint. I don't want to give it away, but his name's said often on Halloween, perhaps. This day in Tennessee sports history, Kalen Deboer, there was a viral video that's AI. It's not true. And he basically says, I've heard loud, no big deal. I can handle Neyland Stadium. But I do want to go back and look at his career because he comes from the West Coast, and I don't know that he's ever faced an away crowd like Neyland Stadium. Stat of the day, 5 Vols to watch versus Alabama, and some Tennessee basketball as well. So we've got a lot to get to. Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you, Dave?
Never better. A lot going on. Let's go ahead and bring Jimmy Hyams in here. Jimmy's appearance brought to you by Varner Ford. When it comes to Varner Ford, I need to be sure and tell you this, and that is I've known them for years. Local you can trust, innovation you can afford. RayVarnerFord.com. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Dave, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Well, I'm glad you're on board. As always, we'll tell you more about Varner Ford as we go on. But first, let me ask you this. And it is today's tough question, and it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Jimmy, we had you on the very day that Danny White announced the ticket price increase. And you had an issue with it that I want to explore, but I also want to share with you the numbers that he shared on WNML. You know that station, so do I. And that's the sports animal in Knoxville. But the numbers he shared to me were interesting, and I'll just throw them at you. He said a couple of years ago when Tennessee had a price hike that they had 3,000 responses. Now, I reached out to Tennessee. That wasn't necessarily negative responses, but what's Tennessee supposed to say? And I don't know that anybody would email and say, wow, thanks for raising ticket prices. That was pretty awesome. Now, he said he got about 3,000 emails that were questioning the move last time. Just 300 this time around. So before we dig into it, what do you make of those numbers?
I'm surprised because anytime you have an increase, regardless of whether it's $1 or $100, there are going to be some people that don't like it and feel like they already are paying too much and are getting gouged. So I'm surprised. I would have thought a lot more people would have responded in a negative fashion. And just in the circles that I travel, the overwhelming majority of them don't like it. I heard from one person who said, well, at least they were honest about this money going to the football players for the what'll be the revenue sharing. So at least they were upfront about it. But some others pointed out, if you want to raise it, but don't tell me I have to support this because I don't like NIL and I don't want to be a part of supporting NIL. So I am surprised by that number. I thought it would have been much greater in terms of those complaining about it.
Caleb, we've already filed a FOIA request to get all the emails that Danny White's been sent, but we won't have that until the end of the program. So what do you make of that number?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Jimmy straight up. Do you believe Danny White?
Yeah, I'm not going to say I don't believe him.
You don't think he could
surprised.
be lying?
I'm not going to call him a liar. You can. I'm not.
I don't know.
I'm not going there.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't call Butch Jones a liar after he said Shy Tuttle landed on a helmet. And
Yes, I did. Because he did lie, and I knew he lied.
Well, yeah, I mean, all of this stuff was already out there, but I mean, I'm with you in the sense I have a hard time believing it, and it seems like, could it be possible, Jimmy? Could it be possible that like maybe he's not considering certain emails complaints, but they really are, and then like the real number is like 1,200, and like complaints are in the eye of the beholder.
Could it be that he changed his email address?
It's true. When it's DannyWhiteAD@gmail.com, we know something's up. Jimmy, your issue was not the price increase. Your issue, and I want to be sure and get this clear out there, is that some of the people that and you've talked to still don't believe in NIL, that payers should be played. And correct me if I'm wrong, they don't want to contribute to that. They just want to contribute to the university. Is that a good way of paraphrasing your thoughts?
Yeah, and I would say they don't, not that they're totally against NIL, they don't want to support it. Okay. They understand this is the way of doing business, but they don't want to support it. And so I think that's where a lot of them are coming from. Hey, if somebody else wants to donate, if some big boosters want to donate it, or some others that believe in NIL want to donate it, let them do it. Don't force me to support financially something that I really don't believe in and don't want to support. I understand it's there, and I understand it's part of what's college athletics, but don't make me pay for it. Let somebody else, maybe with a lot more money, contribute more.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I want Caleb to jump on this. As first, I'll remind you that Jimmy's appearance is brought to you by Varner Ford.
XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Varner Ford, built for the game.
All right, Caleb.
All right, I just want you guys to know, I set up the poll question. Do you believe Danny White saying he only got about 300 emails upset about ticket price increases? 33% say yes, he's an honest man. 67% say no, he's a liar. That's where we're at right now. Jimmy, I got to ask you this. In terms of timing, how much worse does this look now that since he's done it, Tennessee went to Arkansas and lost with a horrible offense? They struggled to beat a bad Florida team at home, and really what people thought they were paying for with a Josh Heupel show and performance, they're not really getting. How much worse does the ticket price increases look now in light of that?
I think it looks pretty bad right now, and I'll say this: if Tennessee loses to Alabama, let's check how many emails he gets after that, because what he did was an opportunistic thing. Tennessee looked like it was growing great guns, right? They win their first 3 games. They're outscoring people. They're averaging over 50 points a game. The offense looks great against 3 bad teams. And then they announced a ticket increase. And so you probably didn't have as many people objecting to that because Tennessee was doing so well. Now that they're not, And if they lose to Alabama and the offense scores 17 points, you'll have a lot more people complaining. So, and frankly, I wouldn't blame them. You pay a lot of money right now for tickets, right? And you expect a product because you're paying a lot of money. And if you don't get that product that you expect, you're not happy. But you should expect that as a university. If you're going to raise prices like that and you put a team on the field that has trouble scoring points, you should expect fans to be unhappy.
Yeah, and Jimmy, let me take that a step further too. You're telling the fan base that you have to pay for NIL, and the poster boy for NIL at Tennessee is Nico Iamaleava, and he's the one that's struggling.
Yes. So, yeah, that's not a really good look. But and I understand the players getting paid. I get that. Now, there are a couple other players that I think are way overpaid based on their production, but the quarterback is the one that gets the most attention, right? As you pointed out. And he is the poster boy in that regard. It's been reported he's making $2 million a year on average over 4 years. I've had others that say, no, it's not that much, but it is well into seven figures. So I don't know exactly what it is. I trust the guy that saw the contract who said it was $2 million. But yeah, he's not playing that well, and it's been a cause for angst. There's a lot of criticism toward Nico for running out of bounds at the end of the game when he should have thrown it in the end zone. He's had, I think, is it 7 turnovers that he has incurred, and which is a combination of fumbles and interceptions. And they've gone the first half of 2 games in a row without scoring a point. That's not a good look. So this offense is floundering, and the guy that's ahead of the snake on that is Nico, and he's not playing very well right now.
Let me also take this a step further, and I think where this is going to go is, Jimmy, I don't think there are going to be outrageous sums of money paid to players before they at least prove themselves on the college level. So I wonder if this whole thing is better governed by the NCAA or the powers that be, if this thing can get more understandable, so to speak, because I don't think the average fan can really accept the fact that a college quarterback is getting paid $2 million a year, or as I've been told, Lance Hurd somewhat proved himself, I guess, in college. He played at LSU, but didn't start. That Lance Hurd's getting $1 million, which I've been told, and James Pierce is getting $1 million, which I've been told. So I think kind of putting the cart before the horse, if the NCAA can fix that, I think a lot more donors might be open to playing the NIL game. Am I right or wrong?
Well, I think so. You need a salary cap, but I don't think the NCAA can institute a salary cap. I think it has to come from Congress. And Congress has been dragging its feet in that regard. And so I don't see anything being resolved for at least 2 more years. But some would suggest that a quarterback making $2 million a year is outrageous. An offensive lineman that's not producing making $1 million a year is outrageous. But yeah, I think there needs to be some type of salary cap. And I've heard people say that you slot it by position, just like the NFL, that the quarterback's going to make this percentage, offensive lineman this percentage, et cetera. I don't know that that's going to work either. I don't have a great solution to it. And I think that salary cap number, by the way, that I'm hearing is roughly going to be like $23 million. And that's just for football. Okay. So then you got to take care of basketball and baseball and all these other sports. But, Matt Hayes recently with the National Quarterback Club said that Ohio State's payroll for football only is $23 million right now. I do think they need to find some way to cap it. And they need to have an agreement with the players to do so, even though they're not employees. I still think you can do a collective bargaining. And most of the players I've talked to don't want to be employees because then they get taxed on their scholarship. So if your scholarship at a particular school is worth $75,000, you get taxed on that. They don't want to be taxed on that. So the majority of them don't want to be employees because of that taxation situation.
Okay. Today's tough question is, give me 1 second, Caleb. I'm sorry. That's my bad. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, an update of the poll question. Do you believe Danny White when he says, I just had 300 touching points, I believe is what the university told me. Not complaints. So today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. All right, Caleb, shoot.
Jimmy, you raise something you brought up about how many people they're not upset about NIL, they just don't want to have to be the one to support it. It's very enlightening and kind of eye-opening. Do you feel like, and I know I do, many of us who all supported NIL, we were supporting it in the context of all these administrators and executives were making all this money and the players were getting nothing. Well, what we didn't think about was it's not like NIL was going to take money out of their pockets, right? They were always going to pass the cost on to the consumers, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah. But here's the thing too. So the consumers would basically be some of your high-end donors. I know of 3 high-end donors that do not contribute because they don't believe in NIL. So if you don't get money from them, then you got to go down to the middle class. And then if you don't get enough from them, you go down to the lower class. Look, there are some fans that have a hard time financially buying tickets, making the donation to buy the tickets, and bringing their 2 kids to the game. I don't think they should have to pay for NIL, but Tennessee's telling them they have to. So you're asking some families to make a considerable financial decision about going to games and being supportive. So I think it's tough on a lot of families. We can't assume that everybody's got a lot of money to help in this regard. And I do think you're phasing out some families from being season ticket holders because they can't afford it.
Yeah, I was told by one person that has 6 season tickets that he did the math, and it was basically about $2,000 per ticket in the increase. And it was roughly $12,000. Now he has really good seats, and he's not hurting for money, but still, I mean, that's a lot of money. So if you came to me more along that middle class level and said $2,000, well, Walmart sells really nice TVs that are very clear for less than $2,000.
Yeah, and so you're going to have more people staying at home watching games. You already have some of that, which is why you have to be in the entertainment business, which is why you have to put on a show, which is also why you have to score a lot of points.
Yes.
And that's when you're not doing that, in particular, the scoring a lot of the points, that's you got an issue. But Tennessee's done a really good job of making it a game day experience. You know, the Vol Walk's very popular. The Vol Village, they got stuff going on. They got fireworks when they score. They do a lot of things to entertain the fans while they're there to make it a nice experience for you. But bottom line is you got to score points and win games, or all that other stuff doesn't matter a whole lot.
Okay, speaking of the points thing, share with us again, for those that didn't hear, the conversation you had with Danny White about, yeah, I mean, it's easier to market a team that scores points as opposed to, let's say, a Buddy Ryan team back in the day that just liked to stop people.
Well, let's go Jeremy Pruitt. You don't have to go back that far. So I had a conversation with Danny White at the SEC spring meetings a few months ago, and it was talking about the hiring of Kim Caldwell. And I said, your pattern is you like to typically hire up and coming coaches who score a lot of points. And he said, that's exactly right. He said, I like teams that score a lot of points because I'm in the marketing business. And he understands that scoring points helps get fans in the stands. So yeah, that's important to him, is to be entertaining on the field of the court.
Wow.
Or the diamond.
If it were me, I wouldn't care one iota as long as you're winning games. And I said that after the Oklahoma game. Anyway, let's change gears a little bit. What the H and Jimmy's appearance is brought to you by Varner Ford. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, so I want to be real clear with this because I thought this was the fairest way to do it, Jimmy. And I was up doing some computing at about 5 o'clock this morning, right after our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. I know Jimmy knows better than that. But I wanted to compare 3 quarterbacks in Nico Iamaleava, Hendon Hooker, and Joe Milton. And this comes after that I took the position of I don't believe that Nico can be elite. Still believe he can be very good. Could also change my mind. But I used these numbers because we're 6 games in. So I wanted to be fair to all parties involved. So I used 6 games from Joe Milton last year, and I used 6 games from Hendon Hooker in 2022. Now, if you wanted to, you could go back to 2021 and you could say, well, Joe Milton was getting prepared for that, but that kind of went off the rails and Tennessee didn't have as good of a team around him. So I thought that was a fair way of looking at it. Jimmy, would you approve of that?
I would have looked at Hooker 2021 and Milton last year.
Okay.
That would have been my comparison.
Okay. Well, here's what I did. And I'm sure Nico's not going to like this, but he's got me blocked on Twitter, so it's not a big deal. Let's start with Milton. He was injured in the second game of that 2021 season. So I took a look at his first 6 games in 2023. Mm-hmm. He completed 122 of 182 passes for 67%. In his first 6 games, threw for 1,264 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, ran the ball 32 times for 173 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, the Vols were 5-1 in that time, but I gave him some credit because Cooper Mays was out. Now, Hooker, in his first 6 games of 2022, completed 119 of 170 passes for a 70% completion rate. Of course, we know that Tennessee was undefeated in those 6 games. The senior threw for 1,817 yards, 15 touchdowns, just 1 interception. Ran the ball 59 times for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now we get to Nico, 94 of 143 for 1,219, 7 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, ran the ball 44 times for 196 yards. So we get to the quarterback rating, not for the entire season for Hendon Hooker or Joe Milton, but Milton's quarterback rating through 6 games last year was 137.3. Nico's quarterback rating through 6 games this season is 149.3. Hooker in another stratosphere, 187.7. Jimmy, that tells me by roughly 20 points that Nico's performance this year is much more like Joe Milton than it was Hendon Hooker in 2022. What do you make of those numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Nico has performed more like Joe Milton as opposed to Hendon Hooker. I thought Hendon Hooker's 2022 season was among the greatest of a Tennessee quarterback in history. And you look at his quarterback rating at the end of the year, and I think he had 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. He ran for yardage. He scored a lot of points against some good defenses, like Alabama. He got 52. So yeah, I think Hooker's in a different stratosphere. Now, I want to address your feeling that Nico will never be elite. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
I think it's too early to judge, and I would give you these examples. When Joe Burrow could not get on the field at Ohio State, he transfers to LSU. His first year at LSU, he's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Last year's a Heisman Trophy winner. He wasn't a finished product. His senior year, he was brilliant. Jaden Daniels was not a great quarterback at Arizona State. And he was a really good quarterback at LSU his first year. He was phenomenal and wins a Heisman Trophy. I don't think Nico's a finished product. I think he has a chance to be an elite quarterback still. Now, he's got to have the right accompaniment. He's got to have the supporting cast. He's got to have really good receivers, which obviously Jaden Daniels had last year and Joe Burrow had when he played at LSU. So he's got to have some help there. He needs a better offensive line, but I'm not going to rule him out as being elite. I know that when there was Heisman Trophy talk at the beginning of this season, I panned it because I didn't think he was ready to take that step. But I also said that I thought next year he could be more like a Hendon Hooker from 2022. I think he's still got some growing to do, and there's some growing pains right now. So I can't rule him out as far as being elite. I still think he's got a chance to do that based on the examples that I gave you.
Caleb?
Yeah, Jimmy, the pattern you're giving me just sounds like quarterbacks that transfer to LSU work out now. Because
yeah, look out if he transfers to LSU.
Yeah, if Nico transfers to LSU, he's winning a Heisman. That's what we're gathering here. But you know, I hate to admit this, but Jimmy's measured approach was the right one, because we were the ones saying Nico would win the Heisman at the beginning of the year, and Jimmy's like, pump the brakes. And now we're the ones saying it's time to just throw the towel in on Nico. He can't do anything. And Jimmy's like, pump the brakes, he'll be fine. Jimmy, I got to ask you this, and I'm giving you credit here. I think you were right. I thought Hendon Hooker was good, but more of a product of Josh Heupel's system. Have we not given Hendon Hooker the credit that he deserves for actually being that uniquely talented?
Yes.
Relative to the quarterbacks?
Yes. And by the way, he wasn't great at Virginia Tech before he came to Tennessee. But yes, I do think that we've not given him the credit. I had a guy before the year that told me that Hendon Hooker's 2022 season was better than any year Peyton Manning had. And I'm like, wait a minute. And when I went back and looked at the numbers, he made a pretty good case. The touchdown to interception ratio, the efficiency, the running ability. He had a phenomenal year. And I think this system puts a quarterback in position to put up great numbers and have a phenomenal year. I always contended Joe Milton did not fit this system. I think Nico fits this system better, but I don't know that he's ever going to be as good as Hendon Hooker. He might be. I don't know. But I'm gonna divert a little bit from my LSU comparisons. Jalen Milroe wasn't all that great when he began his career at Alabama, right? And he even got benched for the South Florida game. And, boy, he's come on like gangbusters, and now he's a Heisman Trophy candidate. Cam Ward at Miami started his career, was it Eastern Washington? And then he goes to Washington State. And now at Miami, he's a Heisman Trophy candidate. So my point is I think there's a lot of room for growth for a quarterback. And we'll see if Nico can grow to that level.
Jimmy, I would offer this too, in that we may have been talking about something special in Hendon Hooker and didn't realize it. I had an NFL scout tell me at the time that he had as good a touch on a deep ball as anybody he had covered in years.
Yeah.
Which is really what this offense not is all about, but what this offense has to do to be elite.
I think so, but I also thought that Hooker was accurate on all throws, whether it was that quick flanker screen, whether it was a slant over the middle or an intermediate pass or the deep ball. I thought he was extraordinarily good at that. I thought he showed a great touch with those throws. I thought he also typically found the right receiver. There weren't many times that I looked and said, why did he throw to the tight end when Jalen Hyatt was wide open over here? I didn't see much of that. I saw Hooker making the right decisions. I didn't see Milton making them, and so far I haven't seen Nico making them. But I thought Hooker was just extraordinary in this offense, and that's why he put up such great numbers 2 years ago.
Jimmy, how close do you think Nico is to finally getting above that level? I mean, I went back and watched that Florida game, and I will say that, I mean, there were about 3 shots that he just missed. And I mean, if he hits those shots, we're talking about a totally different Nico Iamaleava today. Yeah. We're saying he turned a corner and he's a superstar. So how close is he, do you think, to turning that corner?
To be honest with you, I don't think he's very close right now. He did throw, I thought, a pretty close deep ball to score White that was very close to being caught. He missed Nimrod by a lot. Remember that deep ball to Nimrod? My goodness.
Yeah, I thought he thought Nimrod was going to break back on like a kind of a post corner towards the sideline.
Okay, and maybe he did.
It went way out of bounds. We talked about this. I thought he was throwing it to the Gatorade.
Yeah, that was. But my concern right now is, to that point, one, the offensive tackles right now at Tennessee are not very good. Gosh, I hope they don't block me on Twitter. The other thing is the wide receivers. I think they're okay. I don't think they're elite. They don't have a Jalen Hyatt. They don't have a Blitnikoff candidate among the receivers. Here's the other part of this too. For all of what he might say publicly, I think he's lost some confidence. I don't think he's playing with confidence. I don't think he's running the ball like I thought he would. I thought he ran the ball better against Iowa than he's run against any of the last few opponents Tennessee's had. So I think confidence right now is a little bit of an issue. So I think it's going to take him a while to get back in stride. I don't necessarily see it against Alabama. Maybe so. I mean, if you look at Alabama's defense the last 3 games, they haven't been very good at all. So maybe this is a game where Tennessee finds its stride offensively. I don't know. But I think he's a ways away from being a really good quarterback. And part of that supporting cast, part of that's his own confidence.
Jimmy, I don't mean to keep you too long here, but I do have one other question. With that confidence, is it been dinged more because of being a superstar before he took a snap because of all the NIL deal, or do you think Josh Heupel perhaps put too much on him? Give me 15 seconds to tell you about Varner Ford.
XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Varner Ford, built for the game.
All right, Jimmy, there's pressure there. You said he lacks a little bit of confidence. I agree by his body language. Was it more the pressure that's been put on him by NIL, or do you think Josh Heupel asked too much of him?
Well, I don't think it's the pressure of the NIL. It certainly didn't show against Iowa in the Citrus Bowl, right, when he got a start in what was considered a pretty decent bowl game. I think they put a lot on him, and I actually think that Heupel expected him to perform better than he has. And I think he's gotten a little gun shy because he hadn't had very good protection. A lot of times, I mean, you get hit enough times. I don't care who you are. You get hit enough times, and sometimes when you scramble, instead of looking down the field, you're looking at that next guy that's about to lay into you. So I think that's a big part of it, is not having the protection and really not being as efficient as Tennessee thought he would be. I don't think they're asking too much of him. Maybe they're asking too much of their offensive tackles to pass protect. Maybe they need to help with tight ends or running backs.
I agree with that. My base would be 12 personnel. I also think it'd benefit from being able to roll out, but I think that puts slow-footed offensive tackles in a bind. I don't think they're good at that. I think they're likely to hold. So we'll see what they do. But anything else, Caleb?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, Jimmy. I want to know just real quick your thoughts. I brought that up yesterday because we talk about how much Peyton Manning, how well he developed and was brought along as a freshman at Tennessee and how much they were able to do with him. But did it help that Peyton Manning had one of the most massive offensive lines as a unit that Tennessee ever had as a freshman? And so they were able to do more with him?
Well, if you remember his first start, he threw for 76 yards maybe against Washington State, something like that. It was less than 100. They won 10-9. They relied on their defense and their offensive line and running game to win that. So, and then as the season progressed, he did have an excellent offensive line, and then he got better and better. And by the time they played Virginia Tech in the Gator Bowl, he was a really good quarterback. So, yes, he did have a great offensive line. Tennessee does not have that right now, and I do think that's impacted Nico's performance.
Jimmy, it used to be Sundays was when I would try to get away for a little bit before I would cover recruiting, but now that's not the case with my new schedule. And I absolutely love what you do with Tim Irwin on Sunday Sports Sound Off. That has become my favorite show. Tell us where else we can follow your work. We both know that guy John Pennington in the TV biz.
Yeah. So on those Sundays at 11 a.m., we do John Pennington's show. We're doing podcasts with Paige Dower. You can find us on Full Disclosure. If you have any trouble finding our interviews, go to YouTube and type my name, and you will find the interviews that we have done there. Our next one that we're launching this Thursday is with Jeff Francis, who, by the way, was a heck of a lot better athlete than I remember. This guy was a really good baseball pitcher, outstanding basketball player, a good golfer, and then a quarterback that got drafted. So that's our next interview with Jeff Francis.
Speaking of great athlete, Navy Schuler is mimicking Jalen Milroe in Tennessee scout team. Any thoughts on that?
Well, he's a good runner, and that's what you're trying to emulate. So I could see that. Schuler was a pretty darn good runner himself.
I agree, but Jalen Milroe, I think, is one of the most special, unique athletes run around with his size, speed, and power. That's tough to emulate.
It is tough to emulate.
Jimmy, have a blessed day, sir. We appreciate you.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb.
Thank you.
Have a good one,
visiting with Jimmy. We always keep him too long, so my apologies on that. We have the stat of the day, and we also have this day in Tennessee sports history. But first, can you give us an update on the poll question? The poll question is reset, and it has to do with Nico, and it's brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
All right, what do you got, Caleb? Where's our poll question right now?
Is Nico more like Joe Milton or Hendon Hooker? Hooker, too much upside, 68%. Milton, seen this before, 32%.
Come on, guys. It is definitely Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, but Dave, the only thing I'm knocking, and I get everything Jimmy said, and he's right, quarterbacks can develop and kind of have a growth. But when I bring this point up, when you have a coach with a unique offensive system, and you have a quarterback that is the perfect fit, like I always say, created in a lab to run that system, most of the time they never need to develop. And I've given you guys the names for Nico Iamaleava. And I said Tommy Frazier at Nebraska, Tim Tebow at Florida with Urban Meyer, and I said Danny Warfel at Steve Spurrier, but you say that he was a dime a dozen, basically. So
yeah, Shane Matthews was okay there.
Yeah, so basically Tommy Frazier at Nebraska and Tim Tebow at Florida were the two ones I named, where a quarterback falls out of the sky into the lap of a coach who runs a specific system that quarterback is just designed to run. I thought Nico was that for Tennessee. Dave, Tommy Frazier nor Tim Tebow needed to grow when they played in that offense. They were just immediately elite the minute they started.
Yeah, I am surprised, and I will say this, that he's lacking a little bit in confidence. And that, to me, is readily apparent by watching him play. That surprises me. You have to overcome that to be an elite player. And right now, with the SEC being the way it is, there's not a lot of gimmies. That UTEP game's a long ways away. That bye week could come after an Alabama loss. I don't know that, but Alabama's favored. So I don't know when your confidence gets better if it's not right now, Caleb. That's my biggest question.
Even the easier games, we could talk about, Mississippi State is an easier game, but that's in November. And you know this, Dave, like those teams with first-year head coaches, they get better as the year goes on. They're going to be much more dangerous in November than they were in September. Do you remember when Bobby Petrino, his first year at Arkansas, when they were horrible the first 2 months, and then they started pulling off shocking upsets and almost made a bowl his last month at Arkansas?
Well, yeah, and I would say this too. We talked to John Adams about this yesterday. I think that you're going to see a 9-3 team in the next 4 or 5 years make the college football playoff as an at-large. And I think that's because the floor of college football has gotten better. Like Vanderbilt, they're able to address a quarterback situation, and that changes them dramatically. Now, you can take that too far and be Ole Miss, where you have bona fide mercenaries. And I do believe, especially on the offensive line, that you need to grow from high school recruiting, and you're seeing that be a problem at Tennessee. But with all that being said, there's not an easy game left on Tennessee's schedule other than UTEP.
No, there's not. I mean, not at all. So, this is... You're right. There's a lot they're going to have to address. Now, again, as time goes on, Nico could get better. But, again, I just think he's getting wrecked. And to be fair to Tommy Frazier and Tim Tebow, as I look back, they were protected better than Nico's being protected right now. And, Tim Tebow, they both were expected to get hit more, to be fair, because they ran more. But this level of pass pro is horrendous, honestly, for Nico.
Okay, so I'm going to set a new poll question. What is the biggest problem with Nico? Confidence, offensive tackles, and you give me a third. What's the third?
What if you say Josh Heupel?
Okay, why would it be? I'm going to put hype. How about that?
Okay.
I do think that. Listen, I talked to a lot of people that talked to Josh Heupel in confidence, and he didn't do anything to quell the hype. He never said once publicly or privately, "Hold on, this is just a redshirt freshman." It was like I was just told repeatedly that he said this guy's going to be good. And so that filters through me, even though it may not be an exact interview with Josh Heupel, but from the people I talked to, I shared with you what I'd been told. I'll tell you what I've been told is that Medicare Misty does not charge for her services when it comes to Medicare help. She's licensed in over 40 states. So let's hear from her. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. A new poll question is up. Vote on that. Be a part of the show. What is the biggest problem with Nico? Confidence, offensive tackles, height. 2 minutes off the hook sports.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Varner Ford in Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, Tennessee's next superstar. What we're going to get into right here, Caleb Calhoun wrote about this young man also this day in Tennessee sports history. You might have seen the tweet about Kalen Deboer. I know noise. I've been at Washington. I'm not worried about the University of Tennessee and Neyland Stadium. Well, he didn't say that. It was AI. But we did take a look back at the most challenging road games that he has faced. So we'll discuss that because his offense is predicated on communication. His offense can be disrupted, I believe, by a loud crowd. And I'll take it a step further. I think that Jalen Milroe can be disrupted by a hostile environment. You?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we've already seen that with him. Well, I'm not going to say Vanderbilt's a hostile environment for him, though, Dave. I mean, let's be honest. That was another home game for Alabama, as it is for most SEC powers.
Yeah, I guess I was going back to the game. Was it 2 years ago where he had 4 turnovers or 5 turnovers? I can't remember if that was in Tuscaloosa or not. I just remember.
You're talking about the game where was it the game before Alabama played Tennessee 2 years ago? Like his first start against Texas A&M?
Yes. Where was that?
I believe that one was, I need to look that up. But honestly, Dave, that was his first start at the same time. And so, I mean, the only thing I would say to that was I don't think he was planning to start. It was at Alabama in that one. I think he was just not prepared to start.
Maybe he was scared of his own crowd. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Work Trucks. So before we get to the next superstar on Tennessee's football team, and I've been saying this for a while, and Caleb wrote about him, we're going to tell you why he is going to be an all-SEC freshman. He's going to be on the all-freshman SEC team and maybe beyond that. I'm telling you, this guy's special. I've said it for a while. There have been issues with some maturity, but we're going to break into Tennessee's next superstar. First, this day in Tennessee sports history, and it's brought to you by Work Trucks. What do you got, Caleb?
It is the 42-year anniversary of one of Tennessee's 2 to 3 most memorable wins ever over Alabama. In 1982, they beat Alabama 35-28 to end an 11-year winning streak in the series. They were, honestly, it was a really rough start to the year. They barely had a winning record. And I don't know if you know the story on how they beat Alabama, Dave, but they decided to go to a 3 wide receiver set the week before the game against LSU, which led to a tie. No one in the SEC had ever done that before. And they went and shocked Alabama. Bear Bryant and Ken Donahue just did not have the horses to guard 3 receivers on the outside. And that's actually how Tennessee started to become known as wide receiver U.
Pretty good stuff. All right. Ahmad saying donating to Dave Hooker and Caleb Calhoun off the Hook Sports every time weekly. Tennessee wins. My favorite show ever with my favorite people. Well, thank you, Ahmad. That's very nice to say. All super chats will go to Quincy Calhoun, the 4-month-old who has a bright future in front of him as long as his dad doesn't gamble away his college money. All right, so
Caleb, just take out a loan in his name, guys. Come on, it's not going to be any problem.
Exactly. I'm sorry, Quincy's not old enough to sign this. Well, just thumbprinting. There you go. And he's forever strapped with debt that he didn't okay. Hit like, please. Click the thumbs up. Make sure your notifications are on. Cooper Mays will be on Thursday, and that's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters over 50 years in East Tennessee, cityheatandair.com. All right, Caleb, Tennessee's next superstar is?
Their next superstar is the star at the position.
Go what you did.
All right, yes. Tennessee's next superstar is Boo Carter. The Boo has arrived. No, that's not. I'm trying to think of a way to say it.
Boo-hoo.
But why he's going to make offenses cry. Boo-hoo. So, yes, the next superstar is here, and he goes by the name of Boo Carter.
Okay. Why is he Tennessee's next superstar? And then I'll tell you why I still have concerns about Boo Carter. All right, why is he Tennessee's next superstar?
So, Boo Carter was named SEC Co-Freshman of the Week. I don't know if you guys saw that. I pulled up his plays. He had a PFF grade over the weekend of 66.5 in 32 plays. Now, that seems average. Doesn't seem great. Doesn't seem bad. Just seems average. However, when you factor in that the safety behind him, Andre Turrentine, had a 35.7 PFF grade, he didn't have the help he needed from the safeties. So he was playing really physical football and staying in position, had half a tackle for a loss while also coming up with a sack. He was very athletic, played extremely hard, and if you just watch the game, I haven't seen a safety in a long time or a star or a defensive back in general that when they get their hands on you, they wrap you up. Did you notice that with Boo? I don't think he ever let anybody shed a tackle with his.
True.
And that lets me know that he is he already looked athletic. He's also way stronger than I thought. And based on these PFF grades, he's staying in position. Boo Carter is the next superstar on Rocky Top.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with you, but I am going to bring up a couple of things that I think are cause for concern. Number one, Boo Carter didn't start the season necessarily at star. That was still Christian Harrison. And I don't believe that's because lack of ability or lack of grasp of the offense. I believe that he was every bit as ready to start the season as Eric Berry was, who, by the way, friend of the program, Fred White, said of his potential, he's a combination of Del Carter and Eric Berry. And Fred White doesn't throw that stuff out there lightly. So hit thumbs up if you like that from Fred White, who we'll have on the show before long. He also had the situation, I believe it was after the Chattanooga game, where he was dancing around on social media before Josh Heupel looked at him and said, "Stop that." And he stopped that. I think based off what I've been told about him in high school, and remember he transferred high schools amid some kind of odd circumstances, there is going to be a maturity issue at play with Boo Carter for the remainder of this season. Now, if he suddenly grows up, I'll be the first to say I was dead wrong, Caleb. But I think that's why he didn't start the season at star with Jordan Thomas out for the year, who was going to be the starter. I think Christian Harrison, by comparison, is very limited compared to Boo Carter, who I think can do just about anything on the football field. I think if he had to, he could play free safety. I think if he had to, he could obviously play strong. He can play star. I'm going to give you another reach that you might completely disagree with. But if they decided, and they did this back in the day, back in the Philip Fulmer days, they would grow safeties into fast linebackers, and they would oftentimes take running backs or quarterbacks from the other side and make them linebackers. I know he's 5'11" and 195 pounds, but Fred White gained 20 pounds to move from corner to safety. I don't know if you know that, but he ran a 10-2 100 meters. If they said, "Boo, you can be an elite linebacker," I believe by next year he could be an elite linebacker. So I've got no question about his talent, none whatsoever. But the maturity issues, until I see him get through an entire season, are always going to concern me. The one that we've talked most about is James Banks, right? If he was a more mature player, he would be one of the top 5 players that I covered in my 25 years of covering Tennessee football. And I think he would be right up there with you two. But there have been other players that have kind of reached their potential, but didn't because the coaches never fully trusted them. I go back to Kelly Washington. Everybody wants to rip on Kelly Washington because of his celebration and all that stuff. There were 2 or 3 more guys on that team, and I'm not going to name them, but they were bigger problems than Kelly Washington was. I could name players now that you would know that had a positive impact that never grew up in college. So I've seen it happen before. I'm not saying it's going to happen to Boo Carter, but that still scares me with Boo. Physically, boom. He's everything you want. If they had, Caleb, if they had a rash of injuries at cornerback, he could play corner tomorrow.
Yes, he could. And this is where I'm totally breaking with you, like 100%. Okay, let's just take in a vacuum real quick. Boo Carter versus Kelly Washington versus James Banks. Because let's talk about the problem with Kelly Washington, and let's talk about the problem with James Banks. First, the lesser one, because I really want to light into James Banks. But I'll start with Kelly Washington. No one really questioned his work ethic ever, right? He was the hardest working player on the field by far.
I was told he was one of the top 3 hardest workers. Johnny Long told me this, who's the strength and conditioning coach, along with Peyton Manning and Al Wilson.
I believe that. I mean, he was demanding workouts.
That wasn't just in the weight room. Peyton didn't hit the weight room all the time. But I'm just talking about working on your craft.
Right. Now, Kelly Washington, even though he was the hardest working player, he was very much a hardest working player. Like a very selfish player. Is that fair to say? In the sense of he was more about his own future. And I get it, you're supposed to be about that in college, but he really was willing to do things like throw the team under the bus, like trick Dante Stallworth to going to the NFL so he'll get more touches in college.
Yes, for those that don't know, he told Dante Stallworth, he said, "You have got to look out for your family." Dante Stallworth signed with an agent and or got dinner from an agent, depending on who you believe. And the NCAA said, "You can come back, but you're suspended for 4 games." So Dante said, "I'll bolt." As it turned out, it didn't work out well for Kelly, and it didn't work out. Well, it worked fine for Dante, who we may have on the program here shortly. By the way, on the program would be Ryan McGee with ESPN, Josh Pate, and Paul Feinbaum before the end of the week. All right, Caleb. So
yes,
I don't think that. Go ahead. Finish your point.
Yeah, I was going to bring up James Banks because I'm going to compare. Because one, Kelly Washington, Boo Carter seems like a team guy. I'm just going to say it. Everything I've heard. I mean, he was recruiting for Tennessee last year. So that Kelly Washington issue does not apply to Boo Carter. James Banks also doesn't apply to Boo Carter. You've told me yourself. James Banks, it was a diva. He was lazy. That was not Boo Carter's immaturity. Is he? I mean, you don't want to say this, Dave, but Boo Carter's immaturity is that he's too competitive and tries too hard. James Banks' immaturity was he was lazy and thought I am a superstar and I don't have to work that hard because I'm going to be James Banks, and like everything wrong in an athlete as a human. I mean, isn't that a huge difference? Like, you talk about Boo Carter's maturity level, but if his maturity level is, okay, he may play a little bit too hard here, he may throw in a little bit extra shove on the field, he could maybe lose his cool a little bit and needs to work to control that, wouldn't you rather have that than a James Banks who says, I don't have to go to practice because I'm a superstar and I'm lazy and I don't care?
I will give you that. That I think Boo Carter is much more along the lines of a team player. I think he wants to beat Alabama because he's aware of the Tennessee-Alabama series growing up in Chattanooga, whereas I think Kelly Washington, he saw Tennessee as a stopping point to go to the NFL. And let's be honest, I mean, he looked like a very good NFL player. He had the neck issue, but I don't think there was a maturity issue with him. Now, comparing anybody to James Banks at this point is just ridiculous because that guy was so out of touch with what he had God-given physical ability. It's really tough to put into words. It's like what's the movie with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon?
Wow, that really narrows it down, Dave.
Sorry. It was Good Will Hunting. Good Will Hunting. So James Banks was the guy that had all the ability, but just decided to sling a sledgehammer instead of taking advantage of his ability the way that Matt Damon did. What about that for a reach in a comparison?
I mean, no, look, James Banks was just an absolutely, like, that is I would never compare somebody to James Banks. I mean, I'm willing to call him, I say this about certain athletes, and I only say this about certain athletes, guys. When you get in a position to be great and you don't care, then I say you're a disgrace. I say that about Jamarcus Russell in the NFL. He's a disgrace because it's not that he was a bust. It's that he didn't care. He got his money, and as Stephen A. Smith once said, evidently spent it on a bunch of donuts.
And scissor.
Yes. James Banks is a disgrace for the college level. He didn't care. He did not care. He was a lazy player and didn't care. Boo Carter's the opposite of that. Boo Carter, Dave, just look at him. He really cares. He is one. I'm willing to bet he's one of the hardest workers on the team. He plays extremely hard. He's a great team player. I mean, you talk about his maturity. Maybe it's on social media. Maybe he talks a lot. Okay, that can be corrected a little bit. You can just teach a kid kind of, maybe measure yourself a little bit. But Dave, if that's all, isn't that all a result of just how committed he is to the program?
Yes. All right, I'm going to say bank on it and tell me if you agree with this. Boo Carter will be an all-SEC player by the end of his sophomore year, which would be next year. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it's a given that he's going to make the all-SEC freshman team. Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank. I've worked with them for over 20 years. Love them. Commercial Bank, member FDIC. Life made better. Commercial Bank creates positive experiences for every customer every day with better solutions, better technology. Commercial Bank, again, member FDIC for personal and business. Commercial Bank, life made better. Caleb, are you willing to bank on it that Boo Carter will be all SEC at the end of the 2025 season?
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
All right. Are you willing to go all SEC as an underclassman, which he would be a sophomore next year?
1,000%. I'm not ruling out All-American as an underclassman as a sophomore next
Whoa.
year. And I'm not ruling out freshman All-American this year.
Okay, I wouldn't rule out freshman All-American either.
Yeah. And, I mean, I'm sorry. I watched him play, and I agree. Like, maybe he plays a little bit intense, but I love guys who play like that. I love the way he plays. I'm in love with the way he plays. And I just, it's hard for me to understate that. And, by the way, just quick story. You do your Uncle Days. I know a couple of players that were up from the 2016, and they basically said that when Philip Fulmer, you remember when you would go into the rooms where all the highlights of Tennessee plays were in the practice facility, and they would show all these highlights of big plays like all the time, like throughout seasons and games.
Mm-hmm.
Fulmer reportedly mandated that they remove anything involving James Banks doing anything successful, because Fulmer absolutely despised him with the way he made so many concessions for him, and James Banks just consistently made a fool out of him. And after he was kicked off the team, and then he had a 2004 season, I think at Carson Newman or somewhere like that, he reportedly tried to come back onto the team and was a rare talent. But Fulmer took his behavior so personally, he was like, no, just like never even come near our campus again.
Well, I think I was there the moment that the final straw broke the camel's back. And I'm trying to remember if it was during spring camp or preseason camp. I think it was during spring, Caleb, but I remember Philip getting on him and saying, listen, I'm done with this. Go run. And you're supposed to run around the field. I mean, everybody's done this, right? He didn't. He just went off to the sideline and did deep knee bends. That's exactly what he did. And Caleb, that was just a big middle finger to Philip Fulmer. And I believe that it showed his lack of discipline that he had previously in his career. And I think once you lose that, it's pretty impossible to get back.
And somebody with that type of mentality like James Banks doesn't deserve to have an NFL career, and he deserves to live the rest of his life in regret for it.
Yep.
And Boo Carter's the anti-James Banks. He's not that.
No, I'm not going to argue with that. The UPS store Hardin Valley, they're there to help individuals and small businesses by offering a wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated by all fans, conveniently located at 10629 Hardin Valley Road, 10629 Hardin Valley Road. Do we have stat of the day ready to go, Caleb? And that'll be brought to you by our friends at Work Trucks, all about trucks, right truck, right place, right time. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com.
Yes, got an interesting stat of the day, actually, that you might be intrigued by, which is that this is not the first time Tennessee has played Alabama the week after playing Florida. In fact, they've done it 5 times in history. 1944, 1984, 1985, 1990, and 1991. They are 2-2-1 against Alabama the week after Florida.
Fair enough. I thought we could have teased that through our message from Work Trucks. Work Trucks all about
apologize.
Trucks that are actually available. Trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is quick and easy when choosing a vehicle from Work Trucks. Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks carries trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks, Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham, for the entire inventory. And look at it right there. Go online to worktrucksllc.com, worktrucksllc.com with an X. They'll find a perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. That is Work Trucks. So Tennessee was, you said 2-2-1 when they played Florida before Alabama?
No, they're 2-2-1 against Alabama the week after playing Florida.
Okay. I think that's what I said. But
wait, there's two folds on this though. There's actually it's kind of a two-parter stat, and I could save one for tomorrow, but there's too many other good stats to give this week, so I'm going to do this a two-parter because they're 2-2-1 when they face Alabama the week after Florida. They are 4-4 when they face a ranked team the week after Florida. So I mean, they're just 500 galore, Dave. There is a 50-50 chance based on history Tennessee wins or loses against Alabama. Like it's as 50-50 as it gets.
Yep. Give me, and somebody on the message board posted, Peely blowing his knee makes me question things. It does me too. I will tell you this. Whereas I thought that Tennessee was not equipped at all to handle a Peely loss or a Cooper Mays loss like last year, I think with Jeremiah Thielander and Arian Carter playing at a higher level, that Tennessee is better equipped to handle a Peely loss, and they're going to move on. I would say the same thing for a Cooper Mays loss right now with William Satterwhite. Still, don't get me wrong. Is he the ultimate bubble wrap guy that you don't want to lose, or would that be Nico now after what you've seen? We'll discuss that. Stay tuned. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
I defy you to find anyone that brings you as much information in an entertaining manner. Although some Vols don't think it's entertaining, as we were blocked by Nico, Iamaleava, which is, that's fine. He should block a lot of people. I go back to the Stetson Bennett flip phone thing. And I can tell you right now that if you and I, Caleb, did something different, that I'm not sure that I wouldn't go the flip phone route. And it's not because I'm old. It's just because it seems like you can look down at your phone, and we encourage you to follow us on social media. But you can look down at your phone and you can start going through, what are they called? Reels on Facebook?
Yep.
And before I know it, I've seen Theo Vaughn tell 15 million jokes. And are you a Theo Vaughn guy?
No, but I know Theo Vaughn. Like, I'm not like anti Theo Von. Like, I just like I'm not like, oh, I don't like it. But no, I don't really pay attention as much.
Okay, so already on the show we discussed Kalen Deboer and the fact that he made the social media rounds for something he didn't say. Welcome to AI, kids. I mean, that is where we are. And Caleb and I both, do you care if I out you as well? We both almost got fooled by it because there's an AI video that is circulating that essentially says, I'm Kalen Deboer. I'm not worried about playing at Neyland Stadium because I've been in loud stadiums in Washington. Now, we found out, thank you, Travis, by the way, for letting me know that that was an AI thing, and I'll definitely keep my eye out for it. However, let's remember Kalen Deboer and the fact that he was the head coach at Washington. And I'm sure he has played both in the college football playoff and the bowl games in some hostile environments. But even those are at most 60, 70% of the fan base. I hate to tell you, but Tennessee, in case you didn't look at the crowd, they're not letting tickets go anymore to opposing fan bases. That was evident in the Florida game. So he's going to face a 95% crowd that knows when to get jazzed up. That Louis Riddick of ESPN, who we tried to get on the program, haven't been able to run him down, he said is as much of a home field advantage of any college football stadium. First, would you agree with that before we get into what Kalen Deboer has seen?
Yes, I would absolutely agree that it says, Neyland Stadium, it is as much of a home field advantage as any college football venue. And I'll even go a step further. I think it's the most consistent home field advantage of any college football venue. And what I mean by that, Dave, is whether it's a noon game, 3:30 game, or 7 o'clock game, or 7:30 game, and particularly 3:30s, Neyland's at its best for 3:30 games, but it's still amazing for night games. And it's still actually pretty loud for noon games. Wherever you play them, whenever you play them, they're going to be one of the 3 loudest stadiums in the nation. That's what sets it apart from the Swamp or Death Valley. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Death Valley for a noon game, but I'm just going to say that you could, it's very easy to talk to the person next to you at a noon game at Death Valley. It's very, very lethargic. They're all hungover because down in Louisiana, they love to drink till 3 a.m. So, they're all hungover. And, when Ed Orgeron was coaching, he was probably hungover at noon too. So, it's, so that's how it is at Death Valley. And the Swamp, it's not that they just don't show up really at the Swamp for noon games, quite honestly.
When they're a Nouveau Riche program, New Rich, when they show up, it's because Florida is good, and it is as loud as any place, but in the SEC.
It's not consistently loud, though, is what I mean.
Well, I would agree with that. That's a great point. Consistently loud, that is Neyland Stadium. Even when the Butcher was in charge with his terrible haircut, they had the third down for what, which was idiotic. So I want to ask you this before we get to Kalen Deboer, the toughest road matchup that he's faced, now the head coach at Alabama, formerly head coach at Washington. Neyland Stadium is worth how many points, Caleb?
I think Neyland Stadium is worth a touchdown. I really think it's worth a touchdown.
Okay. All right. That'll be our poll question. I'll get that up. Now, give me a look at Kalen Deboer and throughout his career, the toughest away venues that he's played at.
Okay, so we'll just go to last year, and we'll say that he had to play at USC, no. At Stanford, no. At Michigan State, no. I think his toughest road matchup last year, Dave, believe it or not, would have been when he faced Texas in New Orleans, because I actually think that was much more of a home game for Texas than it was for
that's
Washington.
True, but we're taking away neutral site games.
Yes, okay, so
can we dive a little bit deeper into what he's faced?
Yes, and I'll keep going. We can go UCLA, Arizona State, Cal. None of these places are scary. Oregon State. People say Oregon. I'm with you. I don't think Oregon is a scary place at all.
No, I was told by everybody I've not covered a game at Oregon. I've covered a game at Cal. I was told by everybody that covered a game at Oregon that it was very similar to the Cal game, and that Cal is very open. So it's really hard to get loud. It's a beautiful setting. I could say the same thing for the Rose Bowl. I don't know that it's loud, but so what do we think is Deboer's toughest road challenge in terms of an away environment?
I mean, I think it's during his time as offensive coordinator in Indiana in 2019. Well, that was only 1 year, though, in 2019. But I do believe he played, let me pull it up right now. I think in 2019 as an offensive coordinator. No, he even had Ohio State at home. He went to Penn State. He went to Happy Valley in 2019. But that was a noon game. Not the same. Not the same at all. It was a noon game. So, you can go back maybe to, and I'm literally, Dave, I'm trying to pull up his time as an assistant coach. He hasn't had a comparable environment for a night game in the SEC. You could say maybe, okay, when he was at Fresno State, he did have to visit Boise State for a night game. That's a unique place to visit. Like, relatively speaking, that's a tough place. That place, I hear, is really tough up there. That blue turf. And, I mean,
tough on birds before they stripe it that dive into it and kill themselves accidentally.
And, okay, here we go. I found it. This is an obvious one. In 2017, when he was the offensive coordinator, he visited Alabama when they were number 1. But again, that was an early September game that it was at 12:30. It wasn't like the stakes weren't the same. But he did visit Alabama when he was at Fresno State. Here's the ironic thing. He visited Alabama, and then he visited Washington the next week and lost both of those games. I will say this. Washington, when he visited Washington, and then he coached at Washington, he's not totally unfamiliar. For those who don't know, Washington gets really, really, really loud. The Huskies, it's like the Seattle Seahawks Stadium, and it's in Seattle. And I don't know what it is about Seattle, the city, but the fans do get really, really loud, even if the culture's not like SEC football. When they're in the stadium, they can get it loud. The other one he's been to is Washington State, Pullman. Dave, I've never been to the Northwest. I'd love to go, but I've never been. But people I've talked to say that, one of the most dangerous places for Pac-12 teams to go back in the day was when they had to go to Pullman, Eastern Washington, for a game to play Washington State.
And you mentioned Alabama. I tell you, but Alabama's not that difficult of a place to play.
I'm going to break with you, but I'll let you give your take first.
I mean, I don't think it's in. To me, the top 4 loudest stadiums that I've seen are, and there's a big drop off, a delineation between those top 4, are that Neyland, the Swamp, Death Valley, LSU, and you're right, it's different as the night game. And then the other might surprise you is Auburn. I was blown away by Auburn. I think Auburn's louder than Alabama.
Auburn is very, very, very loud. It is. I mean, well, they're just excited. I mean, that's the one part of the whole area that looks civilized is inside the stadium. So they're just sort of like thrilled to be around civilization when they're in Auburn. I mean, honestly,
there's nothing else to do except for what? Herd pigs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
but
Auburn to me is an event because there's not much else to do in that city. So they're jazzed up and ready to go. I was blown away by Auburn. But I will tell you this too. I was also blown away by Mississippi State, but they get to use cowbells.
Yeah, the Cowboys. It's big. The reason I'm going to push back on you with Auburn, and by the way, in 2011, when he was at Southern Illinois as an offensive coordinator, they did visit Ole Miss. Just throwing out all of his history, by the way, for fun. But with Kalen Deboer, that is. But I'll say this much with Alabama, though. I think when you were covering Tennessee, that was true. But ever since they filled in the stadium in roughly 2006, 2007, I think it was, and then Nick Saban got a whole new crop of young fans to come, it's much, much, much louder than it used to be, and it's much more difficult to play than it was back in the day. So that's the one defense I'm going to give of Alabama as a loud stadium. But you're right, Auburn's very tough. I think the long story short, though, is in terms of a game of this magnitude. Now, funny enough, as Eastern Michigan's offensive coordinator, Kalen Deboer did visit Florida in 2014. But again, that was Will Muschamp, Florida, and it was a 4 p.m. game, not the same. So as I'm going through all of this, and I'm literally going through his entire history, Dave, as a coach. He visited LSU in 2015. It was a night game, to be fair, but LSU was playing Eastern Michigan, so they weren't going to be excited to play that game, right? And so they were just like, whatever. This is by far going to be the loudest crowd he's ever experienced. Even though he's experienced LSU in Florida, it's the nature of the game itself was going to make the crowd louder.
Yep. Hound Dogs of Knoxville, champions look good in orange, hdknoxville.com. Again, hdknoxville.com. Caleb, give us an update on the poll question, please, sir.
All right, and that is Neyland Stadium is worth 10.73, and people are saying 10. Yeah, I can't go 10. I can't go 10. If Neyland Stadium was worth 10 points, then Philip Fulmer never should have lost a game at home. Honestly.
Well, they shouldn't have lost to Wyoming or Vanderbilt.
Okay, but the 90s. If Neyland Stadium is worth 10 points, Tennessee should have gotten, I don't know, they shouldn't have lost to Florida in 2000. They shouldn't have lost to Georgia in 2001. They shouldn't have lost. I mean, there's too many games that they shouldn't have lost if it's worth 10 points. I'm sorry, guys.
May I suggest an idea for Wyoming NIL?
What's up?
I think that their uniforms should be presented by the Gap, because they look like they're just wearing khakis. Like it's a uniform that you would wear to an office environment, because they just look like khakis with a regular color shirt, like I would wear to a business appointment. So I just think Wyoming presented by the Gap is a great NIL move for Calhoun.
That would be hilarious. Lou Holtz would immediately take the job coaching there in that case, because that's how I think football should be. He thinks it should be a gentleman's game where everybody stands in khakis and it's like, you know,
yeah, well,
like,
he wasn't
like
a gentleman when he dog cussed me. Peak IV Hydration, South Knoxville and Sevierville, a wide range of IV treatments, and you can order them all online if we can drop that in there, peakivhydration.com. Now, over 105-star reviews, so you can be there in person, but you can also order those patches that will give you energy and hydrate you, rejuvenate you throughout the day. So if you've had one of those tough nights like Caleb Calhoun that's gambled a little bit too much, and suddenly we got to wonder whether or not Quincy Calhoun gets to go to college or not.
Well, it's a tough night either way, because if I gamble too much and win a lot, then I get to drink a lot. I'm kidding, guys.
Exactly. Either way it goes. All right, so hit like and subscribe. Do that now, and be sure and check out Peak IV Hydration. We absolutely love them. And I want to address something else that's out there, and that is Tennessee's basketball team. But we're going to talk about 5 balls that you absolutely need to watch when Tennessee plays Alabama, and that's brought to you by Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
4 downs, 4 questions, 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
I tried my absolute best to get Caleb to switch up his 5 balls to watch to 4 balls to watch so that it fits the element a little bit better. But Caleb sometimes just does what he wants to do. Yeah. And he's tough to reel in. He makes terrible bets, and he says, I'm sticking with 5 because 5's my lucky number. Huh?
I stand on business, Dave.
Big Donovan McNabb guy.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, so lump these first 2 together because Cooper's telling you to like or subscribe. Hit the thumbs up button, and we'll have Coop on Thursday, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, and he will talk about Bama. So we love doing a pregame with Coop, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, as it is what down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
Okay. What do you got on the 2 least most important players to watch in Tennessee's game against Alabama? How did I phrase that poorly?
This is hilarious that you want these lumped together because they are the most opposite of opposites you could ever be opposite of. And what I mean by that is one is a walk-on and one set an NIL record for money. Will Brooks and Nico Iamaleava. 5 and 4.
All right.
Now,
it's a big game for Will Brooks. How much faith do you have in him? I actually have a lot. I think his run fits have been really good. But if he gets out of position, especially with Keenan Pili out, then they could give up a big run to Jalen Milroe. And let's not forget this. If Will Brooks tackles Jalen Milroe because he has an angle at the 5-yard line, Tennessee's red zone defense is really, really good. So that could be a tackle that could result in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points.
I agree. And Will Brooks, he is actually not last week. It stood out because it got out of position one play on the 3rd and 18. It was the one mistake he made all game, Dave. But he still had a PFF grade in the high 70s, and he was actually in position most of the time. He's one of the best at staying in position. If he can stay in position this time, I think with Tennessee's pass rush, which we're going to get to, Jalen Milroe is going to throw some balls up for grabs. And I think Will Brooks is the guy more than anybody else capable of coming down with those balls. So that's a big part of this.
Yeah, and let's be honest, because he was a walk-on and probably because he didn't look like other great safeties, we discounted him early in the year. But I think he has a great nose for the football, the needed athletic ability, and he plays physical. I mean, this whole entire defense, they don't just want to beat you, they want to hurt you. Go ahead.
We're playing the stereotype. He plays good, solid, physical, fundamental football, but that is what he does.
Well, but he does. But so did Rashad Baker, but Rashad Baker had more athletic ability. We're playing the Caucasian card, I guess. But
yes,
Will Brooks is also a walk-on, so we're not talking about, Jason Sehorn, if you remember that name, was a cornerback in the NFL. Nobody questioned his ability, and he was white. If you make it to the NFL as a cornerback, you're very athletic.
Like Cooper DeJean.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Will Brooks was a walk-on for a reason. So we're not just throwing the Caucasian card out there. But
no.
I absolutely love the way the guy plays. I don't care if he's black, white, green, yellow. It doesn't matter to me. He is a fantastic player.
Yes. Sticking on this list, obviously we brought up Nico Iamaleava. Just being the quarterback, he's going to have to make plays. Now, Alabama is not consistently. It's not like who torches their defense is consistent. Some weeks it's the running back, some weeks it's the quarterback, some weeks it's the receivers. It depends on the situation week to week if you really pay attention to them. It really depends on your strengths more than Alabama's weaknesses on how you torch them. It's just Alabama can't be good at everything at once. That's been their issue on defense. But Nico Iamaleava is still going to have to play well.
Agreed. But that's kind of an easy one. So is Dylan Sampson. He may be on your list. I'm not knocking it. But set us up for the poll question, Caleb. I've got it just on there. I went in a slightly different direction than you.
Let's see. Tennessee's most important defensive player against Alabama is... Well, Dave, can we go through the list? Because, you just basically took my list half the way.
Well, tell people where how they can vote, who they can vote on.
Just go to YouTube and you can vote whether or not it's Jeremiah Thielander, Will Brooks, James Pierce, or Arian Carter. All right. Next on my...
Second down.
All right. Who you got?
Jeremiah Thielander is number 3 on my list.
That's hot.
He's...
but I think Caleb totally stole mine.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
Yeah.
How did I steal yours? I wrote this last night.
He stole mine. That's what happened. Be sure you're on Off the Hook Sports and all of your free time because we got great content going up all the time, including how Danny White, Tennessee's athletic director, basically said the Vols fan base loves a price hike. All right. What's next, Caleb? Oh, sorry.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here.
Third down.
Again, maybe I did steal yours, but the second most important player in this game is James Pierce Jr. And you can make the argument that he's the most important. Alabama has given up 12 sacks on the year. Jalen Milroe runs a lot. And, I don't know if you guys know, last week James Pierce had the highest PFF grade of anybody on the football team. And he is playing, I can't speak enough to an edge rusher playing this hard when the sacks just aren't there for him to get when that's what he's there to try to do. He doesn't stop playing.
Yeah, I'm writing a story actually for this afternoon about, and that'll be on offthehooksports.com. I just haven't had a chance to get to it yet, but it'll be how his quiet demeanor throughout September is proof that the Vols have leadership beyond Keenan Pili. And I've talked about the rough upbringing that Pierce had, especially in the offseason. There's a reason he hasn't been more vocal, but he hasn't been more vocal about not making more sacks because he's cool with winning, which says something to me. What down next week?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right, Caleb.
All right, the most important person in this game is who you already brought up because you just had to name everybody that I put on this list because that's what you like to do. It's Dylan Sampson. And I mean, I don't think that's any shock. Dylan Sampson is the most important player in this game. Dylan Sampson, guys, he's a 200-yard game against Alabama from being in the Heisman conversation. And I'm dead serious about this. If he goes out against Alabama, runs for 200 yards, 2 to 3 more touchdowns, everybody's talking about that Ashton Jeanty. And by the way, I've seen some of his highlights. He definitely belongs in the Heisman consideration. If for any reason that Reggie Bush won it, and Reggie Bush had no tougher of opponents than Ashton Jeanty had, if you really think about it.
Jeanty's probably going to break Barry Sanders' all-time single-season rushing record. That, to me, is going to be pretty hard to top.
It is. But I'm saying if Dylan Sampson hits the 200-yard mark, and he gets 2 to 3 touchdowns, Dave, he's really got to be in the New York conversation next week at that point.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I guess Nico's not in the conversation anymore, huh?
Nah, not as of right now. I mean, not all his fault, but he's definitely struggling to this moment, and man, that's $100 down the drain. So for me,
somebody brought up an interesting topic to me, and that is, what if Sam Pittman loses his job at Arkansas? Would Tennessee be wise, given their issues at offensive tackle, to make a run at him? Because now that he's proven that he could be a head coach, not a successful head coach, but a head coach, he might be completely comfortable with just coaching an offensive line, especially one that has some money behind it where you can go out and get guys in NIL. Your thoughts on that? Quality Tire Pros. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All work covered by nationwide warranty. QualityTirePros.com, QualityTirePros.com. Right down below, tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports and Dave said hello. How crazy would that be? Or am I being too hard on Glenn Ellerbe?
I don't think that'd be crazy. Here's the only issue, and it's a big one too, which is the way Tennessee's offense is constructed. Now maybe it's not, because Tennessee gets under center for a team that plays out of the shotgun and goes tempo. They're getting under center for short yardage plays. Are they doing it more than anybody else you're seeing in college football right now, Dave? They are for me. I don't see anybody getting under center as much as Tennessee.
For a team that's offense is based out of the gun, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not under center more than Army or Navy.
No, they're not. That's true. You're right. But yes, for an offense based out of the gun, they're getting under center more than anybody I've seen. So maybe Sam Pittman would be able to step in. But for Tennessee's offensive line, guys, for those who don't know, there's 2 ways to coach offensive line in the new schemes in college football today. There is teaching how to play with your hand in the ground and maintaining blocks, which was, that's what Philip Fulmer lived by, wasn't it? More than anything else. And then there is what Peyton Manning kind of developed in Indianapolis, which is I don't need offensive linemen to maintain their blocks. I need them to dictate the direction of the defensive line so I can step in a certain way in the pocket and make the right throw. That's all I need them to do.
I guess
Heupel's coaching is more on that realm.
Agreed. I guess what I'm asking, though, is how much blame do you put on the offensive tackles on Glenn Ellerbe, Tennessee's offensive line coach?
A ton. Look, and again, maybe the problem is that Glenn Ellerbe, maybe the big problem is that Glenn Ellerbe does come from a more physical coaching style of the offensive line. Again, the issue is that, yes, I put it on Josh Heupel because of his arrogance and his belief that he can make anybody work. But again, Glenn Ellerbe is the offensive line coach. Not one player that Tennessee has signed out of high school has made it to start under Glenn Ellerbe. No matter how you slice it, that's a huge red flag. Now, that could be one of 2 things. That could be Glenn Ellerbe, but it's only one of 2 things, Dave. It's either Glenn Ellerbe's coaching or it's Josh Heupel blatantly missing on the guys he's going after. But Dave, don't you think if Josh Heupel's missing that Glenn Ellerbe has a hand in that? Don't you think I don't think Josh Heupel makes a decision on which offensive lineman to sign without talking to Ellerbe, right?
No, the only coach that I've known that did that was Butch Jones, and it's because if they had an extra star next to their name, he was going to take them regardless of it. His entire staff could tell him they were horrible, but a recruiting service could fall in love with him and they would take him.
Dave doesn't believe in Butch ball, guys.
No, I don't. That's really going out on a limb, isn't it? Okay, let me ask you this. Who do you blame most for Tennessee's offensive tackle issues? Is it Heupel, Ellerbe, or the players? Because I blame the players and injuries. I think that John Campbell Jr. would be a very good player if not for the fact that he has the bursa sack issue that seems to crop up in every game. I think Lance Hurd has just not lived up to the billing. So me personally, I would rank the players and injuries way over Heupel and Ellerbe.
Well, this is another red flag on Heupel. So there's two big red flags on Josh Heupel. And they've been around, Dave, since 2022, 2021, and we just haven't brought it up. One has been around since 2021, one emerged itself in 2023. The first red flag, we talk about it, player evaluation. He's missed on way too many people. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
The second...
Well, specifically in the offensive line. Are you talking specifically in the offensive line or all in all?
I think all in all. I mean, again, I'm never... Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker. I'm always going back to that. That's player evaluation. At the end of the day, that is a failed evaluation that anybody with eyes probably could have seen differently. And I will not believe him for the rest of eternity that Joe Milton outperformed Hendon Hooker in practice. I don't believe it. And by the way, I've heard from you and some other people that he lost in 2021 too because the players thought Hendon Hooker was better too. So now that's the first one. The second one, and this is a big one, his strength and conditioning program. I feel like he's mismanaging the health of players. This is the second year in a row where we keep saying, well, it's not a big deal because health, we got to give him a break because health is an issue here, health is an issue there. I mean, we can talk about him mismanaging Cooper Mays. Keenan Peele has back-to-back season-ending injuries. I don't think that's necessarily on the... That's not fair. That's not fair. Okay. But John Campbell and Lance Hurd both getting hurt, it just seems like Squirrel White being banged up, the receivers, every year the top receivers keep getting injured. I mean, Brew McCoy got hurt Dante Thornton got hurt on a block 2 weeks ago at Arkansas.
Okay, but here's my issue. If it's strength and conditioning, I mean, that we can talk about that. But to me, that's more oftentimes pulled muscles and those sorts of things, torn pectoral muscles. Now, you did have the triceps injury with Keenan Peele last year that I thought could have been due to poor strength and conditioning. Those are the type of injuries I'm talking about. Lance Hurd with an ankle sprain, I can tell you that they barely had him practice during preseason. So they went the opposite way in that regard. Now, I'll say this. I think that Tennessee's practices are too soft. And maybe that makes you not as physical in games. But I think all of college football's practices are too soft for the most part. I think anybody could go out there and just break the rules and do the old two-a-days thing, and they'd probably go out there and at least make the college football playoff with an average team. I mean, as much better as I think the play is across the board, I do think it's a little bit softer across the board, not just at Tennessee, but all schools.
Oh, I think it's much, much softer across the board. I agree, but I think Josh Heupel takes that to a... Okay, here's the thing. The criticism of Josh Heupel that we're levying right now, Dave, is very similar to... It's funny because I'm going to bring up another Tennessee player. When Peyton Manning was in the NFL and he and Tom Moore developed that offense, the freeze offense, Peyton Manning spent his entire career, his whole focus was outsmarting other teams, right? And don't you think that was a problem with him in the playoffs? Because once the playoffs comes and the game gets more physical and it slows down, it's harder to just outsmart players on the other side, right? Because they can just simplify their defense and they're just more physical.
It's harder to outsmart players, and you also have 16 games to figure things out on. So I think as the season went on, he was more predictable. Now, I think he certainly changed up the freeze plays and the calls in the Omaha, and it meant one thing one week and another thing the other. But there's in-game adjustments, and I've heard it's either Rodney Harrison or the linebacker that played for the Patriots that said they felt like they had a really good idea of what Peyton Manning was going to do a good bit of the time.
Well, they were spying on them too because they're the Patriots. But to be fair, but I mean the reason I bring all that up is because there was the mantra that once the smarts is gone, the Colts or the Broncos were just too finesse to win, right? They just didn't have the physicality to win. And I think that you worry about that with Heupel. So to your point with Glenn Ellerbe, is he kind of at fault? I think he could be. I think the system in general is just finesse. But this just brings us back to player evaluation. Maybe Glenn Ellerbe is the problem, but do you think Sam Pittman would fix it? He was Tennessee's offensive line coach in 2012, and Tennessee had a historically great offense that year. Unfortunately, they hired one of the most brilliant men ever in Sal Sinceri to run the defense. But
I told you what I was told about Sal Sinceri, right?
Not good with people, not very bright.
Yeah. And thank you, Timothy, for contributing. He says, hey, better have full stadium for the orange and white game. I mean, I think that he's talking about the Alabama game, but we appreciate you contributing to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. All of that goes to Quincy, and I have to trust Caleb, who has been labeled a gambling degenerate on this program, but it was by me. So I have to trust Caleb that it all goes to his college program, but I trust Caleb with a lot, so I'm not worried about that. All right, so let's get a reset on this poll question that I think is pretty good, and then I'm just going to ask you flat out, if you could, would you trade Glenn Ellerbe for Sam Pittman, like tomorrow? 60 seconds from TriStar Hats, and use the promo code HOOK to get 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Elias says not tomorrow. Ellerbe traded for Pittman because of the scheme issues, but if he knew the system, I'd seriously consider it. Spiffy says, has he ever yelled at anyone is the question.
He doesn't look like he yells. I mean, that's a good point. He doesn't look like he yells. I mean, you're never going to see that meme of Heupel like you saw with Saban when Tennessee played Alabama 2 years ago and Alabama fumbled that punt and you saw Saban just lose everything on the sideline. Remember that?
Timothy says players would leave if you yell at them. I will say this. Philip Fulmer only yelled at offensive linemen that he wanted to leave. And there was one in particular, and he passed away, so God rest his soul. But do you remember Heath Benedict?
I actually know the name.
Okay. He ended up transferring up to school in the Northeast, and he ended up being what projected maybe a first-round pick, and I think passed away for some reason right before. But it was obvious Philip Fulmer wanted him to go because he screamed and yelled at him and called him about every name in the book, and that wasn't the Fulmer way. So I think you can motivate people without yelling, especially in the offensive line. It's a little bit more of a thinking man position. Now, if Ed Orgeron wants to yell at his defensive line, then certainly he should do that. Give us an update on the poll question, Caleb.
All right.
There are a lot of hooker polls. I noticed that.
Who do you most blame for Vols offensive tackles? Heupel, Ellerbe, players and injuries. 44% Ellerbe, 31% players and injuries, 24% Heupel. I wanted to set up the poll question you actually just asked, which is, would you trade Glenn Ellerbe for Sam Pittman straight up?
Okay. Throw it out there. That poll question brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, the Tennessee tradition? Go to rickterryjewelry.com. Also, our friends at Sports Treasures bring you the great prizes that you can get by being a member of Hooker's Corner. Just $9.98 a month. Increased recruiting coverage, more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun, and you're entered to win weekly prizes such as a Celebrate 98 book, or you can also win a t-shirt from Off the Hook Sports. We give those away weekly. You have to be a paid member to win that, and we certainly appreciate your patronage, as we also will give away a monthly grand prize, which will be a mini helmet autographed by Dylan Sampson. I'll go ahead and say it. One of the best Tennessee running backs of all time. What? Yes, I just said that. Again, join us on Hooker's Corner, as we're always willing to turn a trick or two. And you can be eligible just by being a free member for Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. We had 8,000 subscribers, which is right around the corner, and you're a free member of Hooker's Corner, and you're subscribed to the station. We're going to have a drawing for a Garmin watch worth over $1,000. All right. Last look coming up, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. We save.
Wait, you gotta answer the question. Would you trade Sam Pittman or Glenn Ellerby for Sam Pittman straight up?
We saved the best for last. I'll address that in 2 minutes. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. I got to think on that one. Give me 2 minutes. Off the Hook Sports.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
Portions of the program brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. And know that what you're putting into your body only passes the highest standards at the Hemp House.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Let me tell you a quick story. When I was in the home buying mode, I realized that my credit wasn't great. And then I was helped by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier with Chattanooga Mortgage. Go to chatwith2tsmortgage.com, chatwith2ts.mortgage.com, chatwith2tsmortgage.com, and tell Bruce that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports sent you. You can go ahead and reach out to them right down below. But if you're in the Chattanooga area and you're even thinking about a home, you owe it to yourself to go to chatwith2tsmortgage.com. All right, Caleb. So a little bit of Tennessee basketball as your thoughts on some comments that Danny White said. Twofold.
Wait, you have to answer the poll question.
Oh, yes.
I am not letting you get away without answering that. Dave is dodging. He is scared, guys. He doesn't want to answer. He's scared to take a stand.
No, I'm not scared. I would trade Glenn Ellerbe for Sam Pittman in a heartbeat. I think Sam Pittman's one of the better offensive line coaches in the country, and I think Glenn Ellerbe is just okay.
I would absolutely not trade Glenn Ellerbe for Sam Pittman because Sam Pittman has not ever coached in a spread offense where you play with your hands up. Every single system he's ever coached in, from Brett Bielema to Derek Dooley to Butch Davis, has been you to Jim Chaney and Kirby Smart, has been you play with your hand in the ground the whole time, and Tennessee doesn't coach that. So I think that he would be useless coaching in this offense.
Very good. All right, tomorrow on the program, we'll visit with Josh Pate. And first, we want to talk some Tennessee basketball. As Danny White said two things, that Rick Barnes' best days are ahead of him. Let's get your thoughts on that first, Caleb. What do you think of that notion?
Oh, it's absolutely true. And we're going to talk about this in a second. Rick Barnes at SEC Media Days basically let it be known without letting it be known that his best days are ahead of him. And he is 70. He is 70 going on 40, guys. Rick Barnes is one, he's always been good at adjusting. That's actually always been one of his things. I'm not saying he's the Nick Saban of basketball because he doesn't have 7 national championships. Heck, he doesn't have any national championships. But he's always been able to adjust and coach with how the game has changed over time. The reason Rick Barnes doesn't have a national championship is because he's always focused more on developing and coaching players than scheming. Is that fair to say? And so he's kind of like the David Cutcliffe of basketball in that way.
Okay, Rick Barnes' best days are ahead of him. Yep, no way he's 70. I'm going no way he's 70. If you want to take part in a poll question, you can do that. Adam says he's 70 and Durant isn't coming back to college. Neither is Dalton Connect. So the other thing that Danny White said is this is Tennessee's deepest team. And I'll defer to you, but I'll say this. I would take Dalton Connect over deep in a heartbeat.
I wouldn't. And first of all, Adam, to your point, Durant isn't coming back to college. Rick Barnes got bounced out in the second round of the NCAA tournament without Kevin Durant. He made the Elite Eight last year. He made the Sweet 16 the year before. So he's been better most of his career without Kevin Durant than he has been with Kevin Durant on average. I would take deep. Now, let me get this out of the way. Tennessee is number 12 in the AP poll. That came out on Monday. Kansas, Alabama, UConn, Houston, Iowa State, Gonzaga, Duke, Baylor, UNC, Arizona, and Auburn are all ahead of them. Alabama's number 2, and Auburn is number 11. Those are the 2 SEC teams ahead of ahead of Tennessee.
Is the SEC down this year?
I actually think it was more down last year, funny enough. I don't think it's down this year because you have Alabama, you have Auburn, you have Texas A&M at number 13, they have Arkansas at number 16, Florida's up at number 21, Kentucky's still there at number 23, and Ole Miss is number 24. So I actually think the SEC is pretty loaded, and I didn't count Texas, who's number 19. I forget that Texas is. I keep forgetting they're in the SEC.
What about our guy Jonas Adu making second team All SEC?
Yeah, I mean, until you actually get physical with him and he cowers and runs. But yeah, no, I mean, Jonas Adu did make second team All SEC. I believe Zakai Ziegler. Didn't he make it too?
You tell me. Last Look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and On.
to visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com, simply the best.
Somebody asked me recently on our YouTube page, they said, and by the way, click like and subscribe, make sure you have the notifications on, ring that bell. Somebody asked me, I've always liked you, but I don't understand your dislike of Sakai Ziegler. Well, I'm backtracking on that officially, and I may backtrack on I don't believe Nico can be an elite quarterback, because I believe you have to adjust based off what you've seen. I thought Sakai Ziegler had a propensity to play out of control a couple of years ago, and he has been able to harness that and still play with great intensity and not out of control. So, Caleb, I think Sakai Ziegler is a fantastic piece to build around, primarily because of his defense as a point guard, which is a great way to start defensively.
An absolutely great way to start defensively. And for the record, just so you know, Sakai Ziegler is first team All SEC. So put some respect on that man's name. Now, there's a lot that we have to get to with this team, because is it Tennessee's deepest team ever? It's definitely Rick Barnes' deepest team ever. They added Chaz Lanier, a superstar scorer who blew up, 2 post players in Igor Milicic Jr. and Felix Opera to give them athleticism under the basket and more of an ability to stretch the floor, which I think together is more valuable than Jonas Adu and Toby Owaka, who they lost. So they're better down low. They have the replacement of Dalton Connect and Darling Stone Dubar. And you can call me crazy on that, but his profile is exactly the same. And as I've told you guys 1,000 times, this is why Rick Barnes' best days are ahead of him. And this is why Dalton Connect is going to be a dime a dozen for Tennessee. Rick Barnes has always focused on coaching up players. Now, when you do one and dones, that's not a good philosophy. One and dones aren't trying to be coached in. They were looking for a pit stop for the NBA. But in the era of the transfer portal, what can you do? You can go and find a player that has really developed over 4 years at a smaller school and really refined his fundamentals, and now all of a sudden looks like a potential NBA player, but just has to fine-tune one part of his game. And they will fully buy into what Rick Barnes is doing. And they're veterans. And that's what Rick Barnes is doing. That's what Dalton Connect did. That's what I think Darling Stone Dubar and Chaz Lanier have both done this time around. This is why Rick Barnes' best days were ahead of him. And he was at SEC Media Days, and he pretty much said that exact thing. He was asked about 3 things: Dalton Connect, Calipari, and the changing of the game. And he was asked about his colleagues leaving the game because of all the changes happening. And his exact quote was, he basically said, we coach and teach players to adjust. We should be able to adjust too, as coaches. And
I don't think his best days are ahead of him. He made the Elite 8 last year. Are you telling me he's going to make the Final Four before he's done?
He just had his second best season of his career last year. You just made my point.
Well, he just had the second best player during his career on his team.
No, he didn't. He did not have the second best player during his career on his team. If you go look at the NBA and players he has coached in the NBA, Dalton Connect's not going to be the second best player to ever play for Rick Barnes on his team.
Who is going to be second to Durant?
Who's going to be
Barnes is coached?
Okay, well, second to Durant, I'll just go down the list and name a few people, because there's quite a few actually.
Okay, do that as I remind people. Asia Cafe, treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine handcrafted from Guarded Family recipes. 5 locations to choose from, and they also have the Energy Booster Premix instant white coffee that you can order at asiacafe.org. So you can come up with a list if you would like, but there's not one player that's going to prove, other than Kevin Durant, under Rick Barnes' watch, to be better than Dalton Connect, who also has fallen into a great situation with the LA Lakers.
There is Dalton Connect would have to fight to surpass TJ Ford with what he did in the NBA. More importantly than that, though, LaMarcus Aldridge has been a career starter in the All-Star game in the NBA. LaMarcus Aldridge is a career 20-10 guy. I don't think Dalton Connect's going to be better than LaMarcus Aldridge. And I don't think you think he's going to be better than LaMarcus Aldridge. Dalton Connect has work to do to be better than Grant Williams in the NBA. Now, I think he could be on Grant Williams' level, but Dave, I'm not seeing I'm seeing a starter in the NBA. I'm not seeing a perennial all-star in the NBA in Dalton Connects.
See, I am. Maybe that's where we differ.
That may be where we differ. If we do, then you got me. But I don't see a perennial all-star. And look, Barnes said you have to be able to adjust. He's absolutely right. And I think part of this is he knows that this new style is a better fit for him. I mean, and he was asked about, all-season changes and things like this, and he said, each team is my own individual team. He doesn't look at who they lost and who they got. He did say he's looking for the next Dalton Connect. I mean, he did basically say that. But he touted Jemai Meshack. Look, this Tennessee team, guys, has a lot of talent that I think people are sleeping on because they lost Dalton Connect to the NBA. I mean, they still have, we can just go down the list, but they still do have Zakai Ziegler. They still do have Jordan Gainey. They still do have Jemai Meshack. They still do have Cameron Carr, who came on late. Cameron Carr is emergence. His wife, Freddie DeLeon, and DJ Jefferson hit the transfer portal, by the way. On the inside, JP Estrella was developing down the stretch of last year, and they added Igor Milicic and Felix Opara. And basketball is not like football where you need to play together for like 5 years. Dave, you know this. With veterans in basketball, you're a Celtics fan. You know this with Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. If they're veterans, you can plug them together for a year, and they'll play like they played together for 20 years.
Yep, there's a lot of truth to that. And the Celtics were really the first team that did the super team thing. Miami gets most of the credit for that because of LeBron. But the Celtics were kind of the first ones that put together an all-star team to win a championship.
And you notice the difference between the two? And this is a big difference. Miami, those players at that moment, 2011, were better than those three Celtics players were at that moment. Fair to say? Because of their ages.
Yes. No, they were better.
Yeah, they were. Miami failed to win the title their first year. The Celtics won it their first year. Why? Their youth. They had to actually learn to play together. Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce didn't have to learn to play together. They immediately clicked because they were so experienced. And
I'm still mad at Ray Allen for leaving the Celtics. Just give him one more year, and there's one more championship. And He Got Game is one of my favorite movies, but it's one of those that I rewatch because it's so good, and I can't watch it now. Everyone, we certainly appreciate your time. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. This has been a presentation